This is the urban foraging project, which I started a couple of years ago, which was basically just picking up all of the NOS canisters. And all of these NOS have been picked up by myself on my bike.
I'm Cameron, son of Michelle. My whole house has been taken over by NOS canisters. My friends think I live in a trap house. I don't live in a trap house. I have to explain that. I had to explain to my maths tutor last week that why we had piles and piles of NOS canisters in our house, and that was an awkward conversation.
This is this morning's foraging. I usually go out before 8 o'clock in the morning. I have a few spots where I know people are doing it. They usually sit in their cars and throw it out their window.
Well, hypothetically speaking, I think because it only lasts like 20 seconds. So, I mean, like, once you've done it, like, you can just carry on doing what you were doing before. It's not really a commitment. I think it's like, honestly, it's more like cigarettes than anything. Like, at the end, like, when you're drunk, like, you probably have a cigarette. But, like, you know, if you take a lot of drugs, like, NOS is like that. Like, you might do NOS with drugs because it enhances the effects.
Yeah, the people that I think do it at my age, you wouldn't like go out and just do NOS. Like, you'd go out and do something else, and then, like, if you happen to have some NOS or someone else did, then you'd do NOS. It's kind of not really the drug that you could do by itself.
I'm from Bow, East London, and I'm 17 years old. Those are NOS canisters that you find lying about the streets of East London any time of day, quite frequently. I've fallen off my bike because of one of them quite a lot of times, but yeah, they're always around.
I'm from Dalston and I've lived there most of my life. Where, like, I'm from, a lot of people used to do them because it's a legal high. You could get them, and like, it wasn't even a fuss to get them. It used to be like £10 to have 30 canisters, and after you're done, like, you could just kick them around as like a football, just have fun with it. A lot of people are doing it now. Then it's just cheap.
I've never personally done them myself, but I've seen people doing them, and they like to just, you know, sit down and enjoy the hype. I think it's quite brief.
I grew up around Bethnal Green, Whitechapel for, I'd say, about 25 years. When I launched my street food in Brick Lane, and I used to have to set up at 7 in the morning, you'll see them all on the streets, on the side of the streets. As chefs, we use these as to put foam in it. So some chefs will use it as fine dining, and I know some restaurants do that. But I've been around people that's done it and things like that. I try not to judge because, like I said, I live my life with an open mind. But yeah, you just see these everywhere now. They've got a lot. They've obviously, because I think they're a lot cheaper than buying any other drugs.
It's not very expensive, which is why there's like so much of it, because it's only like a little thing. You could just like walk down the road and you'll see kind of areas where there's just loads of them, like, all together, where obviously someone's like a group of people have just sat and just done it, and because it's so quick, you can just keep doing it, and you know, just like balloon after balloon and stuff. People are like driving and doing it. I've seen people with like balloons in their mouths and just driving.
It's a problem because it's a drug, but my other the issue that I would really like people to be aware of is the waste of material, the finite. This is a finite material. It's a metal, and we're just throwing it on the ground.
I'm John Biggs, the Executive Mayor of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. It's seen as relatively harmless. It does cause a nuisance. Very interestingly, one of the biggest nuisances it causes is the littering. And the littering, with these metal cylinders left lying around the pavements, creates in the minds of many other local people two impressions. One is that young people are misbehaving, and the second is that the areas aren't under proper sort of control, you know, so there's a sense of disorder and disorganisation because people are just littering. So I've thought for a while that if young people were simply thoughtful enough to pick the things up and take them away with them, half the problem would disappear. There's other interesting stuff though. So I was at the London Hospital recently celebrating the 70th anniversary of the NHS, and we were talking to a bunch of neuroscientists who've been doing some research on the impact of nitrous oxide, and I think as with a lot of things, you know, a small amount may not cause any great lasting harm, although it may do. But they have a small number of young men, largely, coming into the A&E each year who have apparently inflicted on themselves neurological damage through the excessive use of nitrous oxide. And when they do brain scans, you can see that does seem to be some damage.
So my name's Dr. Owen Bowden-Jones. I'm a consultant addiction psychiatrist and I run the CNWL Club Drug Clinic. So what I do is I run a service for people who are using not the traditional drugs such as heroin and crack cocaine, but a new group of emerging drugs, sometimes called novel psychoactive substances. And those drugs are things like GBL, nitrous oxide, things that are sometimes called legal highs, and a range of newly emerging drugs which we still know relatively little about. Most of the harms that we see with nitrous oxide tend to be due to the immediate effect of the drug. So people take the drug, they feel very unstable on their feet and they fall over and hit their head or hurt themselves. And that's one of the most common problems that we see with nitrous oxide. There are, however, some longer term damages for people who use it very regularly, and that can be damage to the nerves through something called B12 deficiency. And we have seen some cases of people who have experienced nerve damage from chronic nitrous oxide use. Nitrous oxide appears to be a relatively recently popular drug. So the last 5 or so years we've seen it used much more frequently. And the Crime Survey, England and Wales, has suggested that around 800,000 people a year have used that drug. And tends to be younger people, and it tends to be more men. So the way that we tend to see nitrous oxide is not with people using that as their sole drug, but more as part of a repertoire of drug use. Well, one of the reasons people seem to feel that nitrous oxide is safe is that it lasts a very short time in the body. And so when people take a balloon of nitrous, they probably get an effect for about 30 seconds. And so for some people they feel, well, I've used it, it's now out of my system, and actually therefore it's not really causing me any harm at all.
There's a little gap in the law, which is that they are not quite illegal, because you can make cream cakes with them, you know, and lots of people I'm sure do. But and there have been a number of cases where local authorities have tried to prosecute people for buying large numbers of them. And the law probably needs strengthening, because there are useful purposes for them, but there are illicit purposes as well.
So nitrous oxide is covered under the Novel Psychoactive Substance Act. So it is illegal to supply nitrous oxide for recreational use or for illicit drug use.
But the new No Laughing Matter campaign, I think, brought very starkly into focus the nuisances being caused, and we did get a visible reduction in the use of these cylinders. But I think it has crept up a bit since then again. It's about public education. It's about getting people to be thoughtful about the impact of their behaviour to a greater extent than threatening them with criminal sanctions. We reckon we've collected, well, literally millions of them over the last 2-3 years. And as part of our campaign, we highlighted just the fact that we, in a short period, we collected over 1 million from not a particularly searching collection across our borough.
Oh, my name's George, and it's my son's business. The company's been going for around 50 odd years, 53 years, 54 years. The value of metal at the moment, especially in the reds, has had a substantial increase. But it's always volatile, and it's like everything else, what goes up comes down as well. But it doesn't seem to make a difference to how it affects the volume of material coming into the business.
Aluminium has a good price, and steel is quite easy to extract because it's magnetic, and so they'd be sort of hoovered off the conveyor belt before incineration and taken back into recycling.
My name's Sian Glover, and I head up our CSR department here at Bytewaters. So we are an environmental company. We champion recycling. Anything that you need to dispose of, we will find the best way to do it. We're a family business. We started operating in 1952.
So my name's David Rumble. I'm the Strategic Development Manager here at Bytewaters Recycling and Waste Management. These particular items, though they're made of steel and therefore they are perfectly recyclable, if they're not ending up in a recycling process, they're going to be lost. If let's say they're ending up in road sweepings, most road sweepings throughout the country end up in landfill. They don't go to recycling.
So they will be recycled, providing they're sifted out in those collection facilities. Obviously there is a danger if they have gas at a high pressure inside them.
let's say this did end up in the recycling bin. If it's full and has not been used, it's like a mini hand grenade, and it's extremely dangerous.
This is an aluminium in source, but it's viewed upon the same like an unspent bullet, or rather a spent bullet. They don't like them because they explode, because you don't know whether one's live or not live, if it's been emptied out or not. We had someone come in yesterday with 2 carrier bag loads, and he was like, and we said, no, don't take them. There is a recycling value, but to recycle, it has to be in a very controlled environment.
It's a massive issue, and I see them all the time, everywhere. I drive through the forest when my daughter goes to nursery, and it's a big issue.
But at least because these are made of metal, they will degrade over a period of about 200 to 300 to 400 years. They'll basically just rust down. So they're not so much a threat to the environment as plastic is, but it's a huge valuable resource, what we've got here, and it's just ending up in a landfill.
Hi, I'm Dilys Williams. I'm the Director at Centre for Sustainable Fashion. I think rather than talking about recycling and upcycling, the idea of seeing something as a resource is so critically important from a design perspective, and yet I think there's a lot of elements of our culture where we expect to use particular materials, and particular materials are socially acceptable, and new materials, and especially looking at tech and all these new amazing materials that can be created. However, some of the most amazing and distinctive things are made out of objects or materials that already exist. Recycling and upcycling is part of a sort of mindset around recognising the value in materials.
My name is Andrew Prince. I work in the East End of London. I'm a jeweller. I make costume jewellery, and I do a lot of film jewellery. I've seen these all over the place. I find it extraordinary actually, because I don't know how much the gas these things contain, but it seems an incredible waste of such an extraordinary material. It's become so cheap. It's like tin cans. This extraordinary metal is not valued and is wasted, and it's just dropped in a gutter.
I suppose in the end it would be quite good if Parliament, if that's necessary, or regulations elsewhere could be changed to make it less easy to get hold of them. If we could find alternative ways of making cakes, if they could be packaged in smaller numbers, if maybe the ability to litter with them was in some way controlled. I mean, maybe the packaging and the containment of these things could be done differently.
The issue of sustainability is interesting though, because there is a wider acknowledgement of the impact of various behaviours on the environment, plastics in the sea, for example. And I think there's only the beginning now of a conversation about what the impact of illicit drug use might be on the environment. And that's at a very early stage, but it is a very important question, because if you think of the journey that these drugs take from all around the world to come to the UK to be used by UK consumers, that's actually a very complicated and a journey that has a huge impact on the environment, both in terms of the geographical environment but also the human environment.
It's become so socially acceptable for kids to use these, to buy them in big boxes, and the fact that they are so available, and you do get them in, the kids get them in big boxes and use them so quickly and literally discard them in the street. So I think there's something very indicative of a culture of disposability when you think of something as being such a short hit, and the essence of what's involved in the material as totally undervalued, not valued at all. So it's the sort of metaphor, I think, of how our perceptions have changed around value, and how important it is for us to, as educators, to kind of retune that notion of the perception of value.
Have you ever been to the park or been walking down the street and seen these little silver canisters? Well, more than likely they are going to be NOS canisters, or nitrous oxide canisters. Now, these canisters are made in Taiwan and they're used to blow up balloons. But a lot of the time, the youth in the UK are using this nitrous oxide and these canisters as a form of drug. It gives them a 10-second high, but also gives them this sense of euphoria and this sudden calmness once the high is finished. Now, what we're doing today is working on this project called the Urban Forager project with this amazing artist called Michelle, who has made some fantastic pieces of art by collecting these canisters and transforming them into really unique pieces of artwork. Today we're going to be photographing some young kids. That should be a really, really cool project. So check out the behind the scenes. Hope you enjoy it.